What's going on, guys? I'm Twitch, the Shieldbearer of Faith. Thank you for being here. This is going to be a video response to Armed Attorney, their YouTube channel. I was sent a video yesterday and we're going to discuss it more in depth, but if you have not watched that video yet, I'm going to put a link down in the description of my video. Please go watch that first. But the general direction that their video took was, should you carry a trauma kit as an armed citizen? So as their channel name implies, Armed Attorney, they are Second Amendment advocates, as am I. And they're coming from the perspective of two former prosecutors. That's what they say in their video, that their former professions were. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to present my take as a former law enforcement officer. Now, I did have to work in conjunction with prosecutors, but I am no attorney. So we're going to keep that in mind and in context, but we're also going to try to give credit to where it's due. So they have years of experience from the prosecutory side, okay? And that is very unique in what it would require of them. It's also very unique in what their experiences or involvement with law would be comparing to mine. Again, I came from the law enforcement side on the street level, which is not the same as the court level, okay? Now, I have a few disagreements, I guess we'll say, from what points they make in their video. So they kind of go in the direction of carry a gun, but don't carry a trauma kit. That's the general gist of the video. And they attack it from the angle of the legal ramifications, whether it be criminally or civilly, if you have a trauma kit. And they also kind of touch on the tricks of the trade that they would have used as prosecutors if, let's say, I was the law-abiding citizen that used a firearm in self-defense and had a trauma kit on my person, but either did use it or didn't use it. And they kind of hit the dangers, as they see it, of both. Of if you have a trauma kit and you don't use it, well, you're just a maniac and you wanted that person to die and you just totally disregarded their life. Or in reverse, if you do use your trauma kit, that you must feel some form of guilt, which is why you rendered aid. So let's talk about that. You know, guys, if you don't know anything about me or my channel, I approach everything in my life from a faith perspective. And now what I do professionally is I train people to render aid. Okay, so I'm going to be honest, I'm probably somewhat biased. However, the way that I try to train people is I ask certain questions in class. What is worth dying for? I'll start off with that, usually in Responder 2, my level 2 class. What's worth dying for? And I get a variety of answers. And some people will hit things like, family, country, honor. I've had that one given before. Honor and country. Your kids, your wife, your mom, your dad, your uncle, your aunt, whoever. Somebody in your life is usually what they will target. What's more interesting, though, is after I get those answers from the students, I'll ask, what is worth living for? Because you can find no shortage of forums or channels that are very up in arms about Second Amendment, rah, let's go and 1776 this thing again. And there's a lot of channels that go that direction, but very few give thought to what is worth living every day for. Everyone seems to jump to what's worth dying for, but yet nobody tries that. Think about it. We all need to establish something that is causing us to continue to draw breath. And this directly relates to carrying trauma kits, at least for me. So when I was an officer, and since then, I have had a significant conviction to carry trauma-oriented items and a firearm, because it goes in two separate categories that join, almost like a triangle, right? It eventually meets at a point where the firearm does a certain aspect of things. And yes, I had to deploy firearms frequently in my line of work as an officer. Thankfully, though, I never had to fire a single round in self-defense. However, I had to use trauma-related things approximately 30 times as an officer. So if we just take that at face value, then the ratio is drastic that I'm more likely to use my trauma kit than I am the bullets in my gun. And I was much more likely than the average citizen to actually use my firearm in a defensive manner because of the frequency of violent encounters that I had. But what I found was, not only was it a moral high ground to go to of I'm going to render aid no matter what because it's the right thing to do, and I could back that up biblically. But if you took it at what the media's portrayal would be, which is part of what the Armed Attorney channel kind of touched on, there's an ethical and moral high ground to that too. And I have kind of a case in point example. Just before I left police work, there was a lethal shooting between a suspect and an officer in the city I worked. And the officer, I got to see the body cam before I left. He runs after the guy turns around, you can blatantly see the suspect fire off a round, you can see the muzzle blast in the direction of the officer. And then the guy ends up also emptying a magazine into the windshield of another patrol car. Officers giving commands, drop the gun, the guy doesn't, to save lives. So for the love of others, not for the hate of the suspect, but for the preservation of life. In this case, either the community this man was running through, flinging rounds, or the other officer there. That's why the officer used force. So he deploys his firearm, fires off shots. Now this specific officer was incredibly skilled tactically and with his weapons capability. Incredibly skilled. By most other officers' accounts, he was the most skilled person we had. And yet, with all that background and training, and if I remember correctly, he was also a combat veteran, his accuracy was still terrible. I think it was more than 10 rounds and only 2 or 3 actually struck. And that's commonplace. The accuracy in a use of force incident from trained personnel, how trained are you? The accuracy goes to about 30% for military and law enforcement, assuming they were 100% shooter at the range. Don't worry, this ties in a second. So he only struck a few of those rounds, but the bullets went somewhere, right? And it was in a housing complex. And then, thankfully, what you see on the camera footage next is that officer, after the threat is neutralized, the threat is down, they go, they take that gun from that guy, and they start rendering aid. I can tell you, without being able to give you the rest of the backstory of that entire incident, the fact that they immediately and calmly rendered aid to that man is likely why the community wasn't outraged, because it was right around the time of all the George Floyd riots. Yeah. And it was a white male officer and a black suspect. But the community was not outraged because that officer did the right thing. Now, that man tried to kill him. The suspect tried to kill the officer. Tried to kill another officer. But the officer did what was right, what was on the moral and ethical high ground, and as a result, there was no outrage in the community. Because the community, the world, wants to see good. They do, even if they don't know it. And they want to see law enforcement function in that capacity. They want to see them behave in a manner that is protecting others, not killing others. But the sad fact is that a large percentage of the time we're having to use force in law enforcement, whether it's firearms force or pepper spray or punching, whatever, that is part of that job. Well, it's also part of the everyday life for average citizens. But again, back to the accuracy conversation. Those other bullets that were fired went somewhere. I told you it was in a housing complex. Is it possible at least one of those other bullets could have impacted someone else? Absolutely. Is it possible that one of the suspect's other bullets that he was firing could have impacted someone else? Absolutely. Someone that's not a law enforcement officer or a suspect, maybe a child. It was a housing complex. People live there. Let's say that you just decide, you premeditate that you're not going to carry a trauma kit because of the potential legal ramifications. You still got to live with that decision if and when your wife or children need you. Maybe they are the one that was walking through the mall and were struck by one of these stray rounds. Or walking through your housing complex. Or just eating breakfast and it comes through the wall. Maybe because you decided ahead of time that it's just not worth the legal risk to do the right thing, that maybe one of your loved ones dies. And I would also like to ask the Armed Attorney channel, have you ever had to see someone die? Have you ever had to watch it? Maybe they have. It is unique. And it's not pretty. I tell a story in the level 1 class, Responder 1, what we call it. I tell a story about my nephew. He was 2 years and 4 days old when he died. He died with his entire family around at his birthday party. But because we didn't have the items that we needed, no, he wasn't shot, he wasn't stabbed. But what if one of us had have decided ahead of time, you know what, people choke sometimes. Choking is a significant risk for a toddler. What if one of us had decided ahead of time we would have a dechoker in a car, in the house, something like that? You know, just in case. Why not? And instead of him dying from choking to death, maybe we could have had the option to do something else. Maybe. We make a lot of assumptions in life that you will or won't do certain things when it matters. What I get to see every time I teach a class is those assumptions get shattered. Because under stress, when you're actually in pain, and we do inflict some pain in my classes, whether it's just tourniquet pain, whether it's physical pain from where you've done more push-ups than you thought you were going to do and you're tired, reality sets in. And what you thought you were going to do or what you thought your behaviors were going to be are almost never accurate. And I get to see that occur from a third-party perspective. People that think they are the most tactically sound person are thrown into a scenario that I've written that there's not really any winning. There is no winning in it. And so they get frustrated because, well, I wanted to win. This is not a video game. Life isn't a video game. You don't always get to win. Sometimes you're just dealt a bad hand. And carrying a trauma kit and knowing how to use it, which is a huge piece of this, knowing what to do with that kit is more important than carrying your firearm. Because like I said, thankfully, I never had to fire a single round while I was an officer, or since, or before. But I've had to render aid before my time as an officer, during my time as an officer, and after my time as an officer, because I care about the preservation of life. And you know, another sad fact is that not everything that is legal is right, or moral, or ethical, and not everything that is illegal is immoral or unethical. Apply that, use your own discretion how you will. But I can tell you for a fact that if I decide to carry a trauma kit, and I still rendered aid after using force, or rendered aid in a car wreck, let's say. Some things are worth a butt kicking. I was raised with that saying. My mama taught me that. Some things are worth the ramifications you might face. You're not guaranteed to not go to jail if you do use that firearm. You're not guaranteed to not go to jail if you don't use that firearm. There's no guarantees in life. But if it's your day, what's worth living for? And are you going to be able to live with your decision? For better or worse. Are you going to be able to live with having to stand over somebody that maybe you care about and watch them die because you decided ahead of time that the legal risk of having a trauma kit on you wasn't worth it? You don't have time to run back to your car. You don't have time to go find it in your house. That's not good enough. If it's not on you, you don't have it. Lives are at stake, guys. Be better than that. And care about the preservation of life, not just the taking of it. I'm a big advocate of the Second Amendment, but I'm more of an advocate for rendering aid, delaying death, trying to buy people that much time. Because again, my hope is that whatever stupid decisions they have made up to that point that has caused them to try to kick in my front door or try to kill someone else or try to go shoot up Walmart, my hope is that maybe they will give their life to Christ and have a change of life. Because it's not out of hate, it's out of love that we would respond. I'll see you later.